Hi, everyone. I'm glad you're here. All right, we're just kind of getting set up here. Okay. All right, so trying to see if my chat can work for you all this time. It says something's wrong with the chat, so I don't know if that's going to work very well this time. All right. Okay, so unfortunately my chat looks like it's down. And so I'm not really sure how I'll be able to take your questions. So here's an idea. If you want to send me some questions, just email me. I'll pop over to my email if there's any questions that you want to share with me today, because I don't think the chat's working. If it is, I'm not able to see it. Last time we had trouble with this too, guys, so I'm sorry about that. But I'm going to keep my cell phone on with my email up. So if you have any questions, just email me at elizabeth@seerandscientist.com, SEER and scientist.com. And I'm going to keep my cell phone here with me. And so towards the end, when we get to questions and things, we'll see if we can make that happen here. Good. Okay. I'm really glad to see all of you. It's it's been a crazy month. So we have a lot to cover. February has been really intense. Nobody really got a break from the waves of consciousness that are happening at the moment. There's these big waves coming through, and there's a tsunami of energy. I'm sure you've been feeling it. Past couple of days have been magnified about it because there's this giant full moon, right? And this full moon is massive. It's pulling a lot of energy through. There's a lot of distinctive structures being dissolved in this big rolling, roiling wave, right? Well, one of them is the fear of death. This has been, of course, being brought up through our DNA over the past year, big time. And that fear of death energetic, well, that's deeply ingrained in our human consciousness. It's deeply ingrained in the embodiment, right? So it's very important for us to be conscious about that energy that's showing up. And those kinds of things, they draw out energy from us. So our DNA is expressing this all the time. It's expressing a fear of death, whether it's in your mind consciously or not, because your ancestors went through it. They were dealing with this major program around the fear of death. So if the past week has been showing up for you around this fear stuff, this fear of death stuff, or even more so the past few months, you're right in line with what's happening to everyone. We're being asked to finally shed this program. It's a deep program that it goes on from, many hundreds of thousands of years. And humans are unlike any other animal in that they are very deeply afraid of death. They really arrange their life around the fear of death. And so how does that look exactly? Well, look at the medical industrial complex, for example. Look at the beauty industrial complex. Look at the health and wellness or alternative healing complex, right? I mean, these are multi-billion, trillion-dollar industries that are constantly bombarding us with a lot of worthlessness stuff. You're not pretty enough, you're not skinny enough, you're not healthy enough. All these things, and even worse, this energy of, well, now you have to have these certain treatments and we're not going to budge on that or whatever. There's all this fear around it. What's happening? I want you to psychically look at this with me, right? So when we dig in psychically, you follow that thread of that fear and it leads always to the same place. No matter where it is, around beauty or medicine or wellness, it'll lead you to the same place. And the same place is, of course, energies that feed off of fear. So no wonder we got set up with all these programs that cause us to leak energy and leak fear. We got set up with massive structures and systems that do exactly that. Oh, you should be afraid of the financial industrial complex coming after you for back taxes. Or, oh, you should be afraid of the business industry because you're going to have to navigate all these things. It's so complex, right? The complexity of these systems is mind-blowing, right? The bureaucracy is insane. And there's a lot of anger and energy there. Well, where's it going? Where's all the anger and the fear and the energy going? We don't normally ask ourselves that question. We're trying often to just trudge through the 3D experience, and we're not really asking, where is the energy leaking to, right? So it gets pulled and triggered, and all these things happen, but it goes somewhere. It fills the bellies of the energetic systems that are built to pull on you. And this is the drama of the past 500,000 years of human consciousness. So all this has to end, but where does it end? Normally we'd say, well, dismantle the structures, right? But that leaves a power vacuum. We're seeing that happen right now. There's been all these different vacuums created, and the things that come in to replace it, well, they want the same level of power over, the power over dynamic. They want the same level of power over. And a lot of times it'll get taken to another extreme. So there'll be polarities, right? Or politics that'll go from one extreme to another. And that's just a sign that all these things are really falling apart, especially when it starts to get really, really extreme. So the real way to change it, you know what I'm going to say. The real way to change it is in you. If we can deprogram ourselves, culturally conditioned programs, right? Trauma conditioned programs, genetically conditioned programs, if we can deprogram, dismantle, dissolve, what are we heading towards when we do that inside of ourselves? There's this glorious place called beginner's mind. Beginner's mind is when you're aware that your beliefs and ideas and description of the world, that the relationships and structures that are there that supposedly help you meet your needs. I mean, really honestly, if we ask ourselves, have these structures, have these systems truly met our needs? I would bet money that they haven't. I personally have not felt that my needs have been met by these systems. And if I haven't, with as much privilege and with as much education and opportunities that I have been given, I'm extremely blessed. And I work my butt off to make sure that I use those opportunities well. but I'm still in massive amounts of debt. And I, at one point, had to work multiple jobs, and my husband had to work multiple jobs just to get by. We went into more debt, even with multiple jobs per person in a two-adult household. Meeting your needs is not part of the system. In fact, I would argue that it purposefully doesn't meet your needs, so it creates dependency, especially on debt. And debt is an energetic leaking point. I certainly can feel it. So when I'm trying to list out all the things, all the places where all my energy leaks out, my debt's right there up at the top. I've spent decades worrying about my debt. And I'm sure many of you much longer than I. So that's a good point to consider, right? The systems that are in place were never there to meet all your needs, right? It's the other way around. Your presence and your conditioning around being part of those systems and thinking that they're normal, that's that conditioning, that's cultural conditioning, thinking that they're normal. Those systems, when they are considered normal, well, that's when we get into the mess. That's when we're confused and overwhelmed, and we feel bombarded by the trash bags of trauma that are inevitably built up by those systems. That's the purpose. And that trauma is gobbled right up. So it goes into a dense energetic that is used, it's utilized. When we're going into beginner's mind, when we go in and we say, everything I thought I knew about how culture works or how these systems are supposed to serve us and meet our needs, I'm throwing right out. I'm dissolving it. I gotta go to the beginning and assume that I know nothing. Assume that you know nothing. This is gonna cause your soul to say, all right, I'm gonna try to be in a beginner's mind, and then the ego says, hang on a second. And that's really good, because then you're gonna see the difference. There's a big difference between the witness, objective state of the soul and, of course, the ego, who is trying to navigate the systems. The ego really is there to try to help you. It's trying to protect you. It's trying to make sure you can move through the bureaucracy. And it teaches you that your judgments, your expectations, your attachments, your resistance to things, that these are going to be useful to you to help you navigate all this structure, right? And years go by and you're still tired and your needs still aren't met and you're in more debt. Or even worse, the things that have happened in the past year, now the debt is skyrocketed, right? The back rent. So much fear. This energy gets consumed. So we can't feed the beast anymore. Can't feed the beast. We are the bringers of light. We're the ones who can recreate everything from the bottom up. But we can't do it by using the same blueprints that have been installed in our DNA to keep us in a box. The blueprints have to go too. What a troubling and difficult situation we're in. However, we needed trust. We've got to trust. Trust what? Well, you could say trust source, but not everybody's comfortable with that. I would argue that if you at least were willing to say, I'm going to work on trusting nature, that's why the concept of biomimicry, I want to bring that to the table as one of the answers, right? I just laid out the problem, but let's talk about the answers too. Biomimicry. What a cool concept. I just love biomimicry. So biomimicry is when we design systems, materials, lifestyles, the movement of goods, when we design our cultures around nature and its laws. That's an answer. That's an answer. Again, it doesn't mean that you're going to build those systems, but in order to bring them forth into consciousness right now, if that's all that we accomplish right now, and then the generations after us figure out how to use that foundation that we created in ourselves first, then they'll be able to build those systems because they won't be so culturally conditioned and programmed to function in such a horrifying situation that's literally being dismantled and crumbling before our eyes. So this is really key. If you can say to yourself, all right, I'm willing to say I'm going to try my best to think about how I can live in harmony with nature more, then you just tackle the quadrants, right? There's quadrants to consider. There's cultural quadrants, and then there's, of course, the interpersonal. So the quadrants of the interpersonal are, and this one's common, right? Mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. How can you mentally work more in harmony with nature? Well, I'll give you a tip. Stop beating yourself up. Does your cat beat itself up? Does your dog sit there and think about how ugly he is? Or think about how worthless she is? Stop that part of your mind. Bow to it. So here's how you do that, right? Bow to your mind and say, thank you. Thank you, mind. Gratitude pauses this stuff going on in your brain. Thank you, mind. I really appreciate you're trying to help me navigate this stuff. You've been culturally conditioned to navigate the bad stuff and not to seek out all the different natural harmonic stuff, right? That's why everyone feels lost, because they don't know what road to take. They haven't been led to go look at the natural, right? So that's what I'm urging you to do. But with gratitude, just bow to your mind. Your mind's done the very best it can for you, right? It's trying to help you out. It's trying to help you. So we need to bow to it, and it pauses the brain. The brain really wants to hear from you. The brain really wants to hear from your soul. And that's one way you can do it. When you hear that, you're so ugly, or beating yourself up, then you're just going to bow to it and say, thank you. I know you're trying to help me. You're trying to help me navigate a corrupt set of systems, but that navigation is inherently corrupt because it naturally builds up the personal, it bolsters the ego through trauma, and it's never going to be satisfied with your perfection because you're already perfect. So then the second piece, that's the mental, right? Emotional. You need to constantly notice your triggers. If we're going to bring the emotional into a more natural state, it needs to be still. So we need to notice our triggers, right? And so keep this in mind. Triggers are treasure. Triggers are treasure. And when you're aware of your triggers, they're really going to help you. They're going to shift in your body when you welcome them. There's nothing wrong with triggers. There's nothing wrong with ego. These are incredible tools of learning that the universe has gifted you with. So if you can understand your triggers are treasure and go deep into your triggers and welcome them in your body, then you're going to find that you're in a more natural state, a more expansive state, a state that is more one with everything because you're not separate from nature. You see, those systems, those corrupt systems falling apart, they want you to think that you're not only separate from nature, that you have control over nature, that you're here to subjugate nature instead of work in harmony with it. But if you're willing to notice your triggers and welcome them, you're going to bring your emotional body into a more harmonic state and find that you are not separate from any of these things. You're not separate from the trees and the bees and the birds and the cat and the dog, okay? That light in them is your light too. And then we have the physical. How do you bring your physical body more into nature? Well, we have a lot of ways to do that. I would say, you know, lean more towards using less plastic. That's great. Lean a little more towards using less single-use plastics, especially. Little stuff physically can make a big difference. But it's not just about what you use or not. Using what you have with gratitude is more natural, right? So even if I do buy a bottle of water, beating myself up is just going to cause more distortion. If I buy that bottle of water and I'm grateful and I am in full gratitude for all that occurred with that bottle to get that in my hands, then you're more natural, you're more free. And that bottle, well, it can be reused for a lot of things, right? And it's not the end of the world. So, you know, although we want to really focus in on having more biodegradable stuff, that is a big way to vote with your money, right? Is to purchase items that are not going to be so highly packaged up with plastics and such, encouraging companies to move over towards biodegradable plastics, which already exist. You know, so this is key. This is the end of the top-down energetic. All these systems in place, they work from top down. They dictate to you what you are going to buy and eat and all these things. They have subconsciously tapped into your mind through television to access you and to convince you that this is happiness, right? This is not natural. What is a natural way of functioning? Bottom up. Bottom up. Everything is going to have to be bottom up, and it starts with you. That's why I'm encouraging you to start with yourself if you want to see the world change. It's got to be you. You're a creator being. You can create the bottom up by being willing to navigate nature inside yourself, right? So what's the spiritual that we can do to make ourselves connect more deeply with nature? Get out there and be with her. Be with the earth. Talk with the birds. Be with the animals. Be with the plants. Notice the bacteria in your body. Get barefoot on the ground. Hug trees. This doesn't make you a hippie. This makes you more human. This makes you more human. This makes you more natural. You know, and I'm not assuming that we're all suddenly going to become 100% perfectly natural, living exactly the way the mystic Anastasia describes and all this stuff. No, this is going to take generations. We're talking about conditioning that's happened over 500,000 years. Baby steps. Baby steps. I'm always just noticing this, you know, I don't live a perfectly natural life, by golly. I'm talking to myself as much as I'm talking to you, right? And so the cultural quadrants that will change from this inner work are beliefs about reality. Be willing to throw most of your beliefs right out the window. Get back into an infant state of mind. The infant sees the world more honestly. The infant sees light. That's more true. Be willing to keep looking for light, especially in other people, especially in other people you don't like. Be willing to look for light. I guarantee you'll find it. I'm very extremely blessed. I can see that light. I can physically see it. When I was a little kid, I used to lament to my mom that I felt like people really couldn't see the real human, that they couldn't see what was really going on. And I described to her this light that's moving through people and connecting them, and they're all completely unaware of it. She said, well, I think that might be the soul. And I agree, it is. But where does the soul come from? Directly from source. That light is source moving through us. And I remember as a child being able to look down at my body, and I can still see this, but I can see light moving from my body. It's very cool. And just by being open to it, by saying, like, I'm really open to perceiving this light, your body will naturally begin to allow you to perceive it. You may or may not physically see it, but you could definitely feel it. Light feels connective. Light is deeply dissolving. We want more and more light because that means that the distortion of structure, the distortion of trauma, the distortion of the problems of our society, etc., that distortion is moved out of the way, and what shows up? It's just this pure, unbridled, intelligent, conscious light, right? So when we have a belief system or an idea about reality, it really narrows our vision of the truth. And the truth is so much bigger and more intelligent than we've ever been able to truly perceive. We can't really wrap our minds around it. But if you're willing to throw out most of that and say, I am a child of Source God. I'm a child of Source God. I choose to understand all things are of this light, and that's the most truth I could ever seek out. Everything is made of light. Put that as an intention from your heart out into the world and say, I really want to experience this oneness. I want to experience this light. I want to see it, perceive it, feel it. I want to see Source God in all things, including myself. Put that as an intention, right? And when we build our pillar of light in a little bit, that can be one of our intentions. So then the cultural quadrants that change as well, of course, are social structures. So the relationships you have are going to change. The more you work on you, let's say your spouse is having some major trouble. Maybe your kids and you aren't getting along very well. Maybe your coworkers or your boss you're really having a hard time with them. Or maybe you feel completely isolated. So many people do right now. In sessions, I'm hearing this, right? Of course they do. That makes sense. But that isolation can end. The frustration can end. We can work deeply on the self, and that means, of course, less distortion from your ego and your trauma, and more light. Well, that light is nourishing. That light nourishes you, it nourishes your family, it nourishes all those people that you work with, it nourishes the people at the grocery store, right? How do we know this? Well, a personal example, I've been really trying to embody this, but be a radiant embodiment of light, where there's no separation or identity anymore distorting that. And as I work on it more and more over the years, every once in a while I'll be in public and random people will come up to me and they'll say things like, "Can I touch your hand?" Or "Can I hug you? Can I ask you some questions?" And they've never met me in their life. And I always say, "Hey, good job. You weren't sure, but you acted on it anyway. You could feel that you needed something and they reached out." So I always commend people. Good job. You asked for what you needed. Of course, it's not me who's going to answer that call or answer that need, fulfill it. It's the light. Has nothing to do with me. So I always give them a hug and I remind them that they're connected already, that that was what they needed, was to just remember they're connected, right? And that's so beautiful. It's so special that we can do that. And that happens for you too. You'll be walking around as you do this work saying, I am going to be more formless. I'm going to be more light. The people around you will react to it. Not always really happily, trust me. Not always happily, but that light is drawing things out for them to look at. So just be available. You don't have to fix any issues if people are reacting to light, okay? There's nothing to fix. Just be present. Say, I'm here for you if you want help processing, if you want to talk. I've watched my family, my small little family, change a lot over the years. I've watched my husband change. I've watched my children change. I've watched our relationships change because of that inner work. And it has nothing to do with me. It's not because I fixed anything. It's because I am working on my ego and my trauma. And then there's more light available to everyone around me. And light wants to draw out more light. Light wants to merge. So what's it going to do? That light shows the blockages that are in other people to them, right? And so they might go through a bad day after you've done all this inner work. A day or two later, suddenly there's a breakdown that happens. It's because that light shines a bright, massive spotlight on what's blocking the light from the other person on the other side. What's blocking these two things from merging? And that big block can be deeply subconscious. So don't be surprised if with your inner work on this stuff, the relationships around you begin to change a lot and the people begin to change a lot. And it usually goes into best case scenario where people have big breakthroughs. It's not just that they have a breakdown. That breakdown will lead to a breakthrough and a little more formlessness, right? Then, of course, the next thing that changes is the political economy, and that's the one that doesn't want to change. The political economy is one of the hardest things to change in culture. The political economy is how needs are met, and there's a stranglehold on that in our planet, on our planet. So it's not just any one country. It's a stranglehold on how people's needs are met. That's why none of your needs are met. Not fully, right? That's why debt exists, because there's a stranglehold on. That whole system is about control and wealth, and it shouldn't be. A different system, one that would be more in tune with nature, would be based on merit, and it would not be top down, it would be local. It would be local up. And that's something that we're going to have to work towards. It's going to take a lot of mindset shifts. The mind has to shift around it because we're so used to top down. We're even perhaps culpable by being apathetic or compliant to the top down. And of course, that's not your fault. You were conditioned to do that. It's nobody's fault. This is just a matter of control. So a merit-based political economy is something entirely unique. We've never seen something like that here. The closest we got was egalitarian societies, but that same model for egalitarianism cannot easily work at the scales that we're talking about. So it's going to be egalitarian based, but it's going to have to be a bottom-up model that will also be concerned about the globe, right? Because we are in global consciousness. Global consciousness is different than globalism. Globalism is top down. Global consciousness is bottom up. It's saying you're conscious about the planet. You're conscious about all the other humans and all the beings affected by human presence and consciousness, especially the earth. And not feeling separate from those things, not saying, well, I'm going to subjugate or steward or whatever. That's got to be tossed out too. It's going to be a different way of thinking, saying, I'm not separate from this. My cat helps me. My dog is there for me. My beautiful pony, Opal Rose, who still lives in Kentucky with a new family, and we get pictures of her sometimes, and we dream about her sometimes. I'm sure she dreams about us too. We miss her a lot. But Opal Rose showed me this. She said, you think that I don't help you, that you are here to take care of me. It's the other way around. It's that we take care of each other, and I'm taking care of you too. I'm taking care of you with my heart. And she showed me how that worked, and it astounded me because because of my mindset, I have to take care of this pony. I was blocking the receiving that was happening too. I couldn't perceive it. And she blew that right out of the water. And she showed me that her heart was helping me and helping my body heal. She was healing me. She was healing my mind and my heart. I'm so grateful. There's more equanimity between the animals and myself now because I see very clearly they don't see themselves as above or below me, and they never have. And that my idea around that is simply distorted. That the ways that they help us are incredibly nourishing and subtle and full of light and might not be what we're used to, being usually the one in charge. So I just want to point that out, that nature is in equanimity with us, that the animals and plants around us, they serve us very deeply, but without any expectations or judgment, without any ego or attachment. It's very pure, it's pure light. And there's no transactions there. My pony didn't expect anything else from me than I was already giving. And she was giving freely from her love and her heart to help me. There wasn't any expectation for any return on that. That's going to be a hard one for us to drop because humans are highly transactional. We think, well, I borrowed an egg from so-and-so, and now I need a cup of sugar. So the most likely person you're going to go ask for the sugar from is the person that borrowed an egg from you. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's just the basis of what's called transactionalism. Humans literally, you have a little chalkboard in the back of your mind that has some tallies of who energetically is indebted to you in some way, shape, or form. And that's not really how nature works. So we're going to need to reprogram ourselves around transactions. That's going to be really hard because that's part of the political economy we've been carrying around with us. In anthropology, political economy is considered a stop. It's a brake. It literally acts like a car brake. Change might be rolling along through people's beliefs and language and relationships, or rolling along happening in the infrastructure, but change gets stopped right in its tracks when it hits a highly controlled political economy. And that's why the crumbling of these systems is so slow. Because that political economy is trying to keep it from happening. It can't. And it is happening, but it's happening very slowly. And the top down, they want to say that the changes that they are implementing are a special reset and all this stuff. And it's just more control. It's more control. That's all. It's more top down control. A true actual reset would be bottom up. It would be the empowerment of humanity. It would not create more dependency. It would create more independence, or even better, unity, actual unity. And that unity would be based in humanity and integrity. And that is not what we're in right now. We're not in a humane nor a system that has integrity. The systems do not. They are not humane. They are not full of integrity. They cause more suffering. In fact, they advance themselves upon suffering. That's what's ending now. The last thing to change is often the physical. And for you personally, that's going to mean better health. It's going to be the end of your feelings of isolation. Even if you are alone, you won't feel alone. You'll be tapped into the natural internet, the real internet. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a fan of the internet. My generation helped create this internet and make it what it is by being the biggest first user group. And so I'm a fan of it, but it's also a matter of control. So what do? We just run light through this stuff. I'm running light through the internet right now. I'm just trying to bring through this hope, bring through a conscious pathway that I'm seeing, that I know about because I've been working with people for so long, that I study very carefully. I study light. And so that's a wonderful thing. I get to share all of this with you each month. It's one of my greatest pleasures in life, is to run light back through the system. But there's another internet, a real one that's been around since the beginning. It's the electromagnetic plasma universe, my friends. And you are intimately part of it. You don't need a radio tower to connect to humanity. You don't need anything to connect. You don't need a TV. You don't need a cell phone. You don't need a computer to connect to consciousness. And it's more pure and more real. You know what's not real? The distorted texts that we put up on social media, the little typed up comments and emails. That's just simply a big, huge wall between us. How do you know? Most people, when they're, especially on social media or in any sort of online community, will say things that they normally would not say to people in person. And not everybody, but most people feel safe behind text, because now it's a one-way conversation when you're creating messages. And if there is responses, people will allow a lot of the worst of their ego to show up in text, because now it's not going to get blasted by the presence of someone's actual feelings or someone's actual heart field, right? Text can really distort a lot, because one sentence can be read as many different ways as there are humans. Take that in. That's another t-shirt. All these great t-shirt ideas coming up all the time. One sentence can be read as many ways as there are humans. So, this is important, because that sentence is going to be often misread and taken right out of context, right? That's what a lot of this online mess is all about, let alone the fact that a good portion of people on social media aren't even real. You'd be shocked. So I'm always shocked. Like, wow, this is just another form of control. But the physical changes, feeling more connected to everything, feeling like you're in oneness, feeling like your presence on this planet matters. When's the last time you felt that? When's the last time you felt that your presence on this planet matters? I'm so lucky that I get to work with people and do sessions, because those are the moments that are so real and so pure, and I can feel that my presence is mattering, right? But it's mattering because why? Because that light is drawing the light out in others, because it's showing me where my ego is, because it shows me where I've personalized something that has nothing to do with me, that has to do with source and light, right? I learn in sessions as much as I try to help other people learn and create. And by getting out of the way and not making it about me, I can dissolve more and more and more into that light. And then I can say, I'm just so glad that I'm present. I'm so glad that I'm alive. I'm grateful for existing. And that is personal, yes. That's the ego saying, I'm glad that I exist. But it's a big step towards being finished with, there's no point, I don't matter. Whatever I do is not going to change the world. The conditioning we've been taught over the years to be good little workers and to be subservient to the top-down mandates. Your presence, your consciousness, your deeds, the emails you type, the little things you text, all of these matter. They can either be full of light and nourishing and bringing out light in all things, or not. Or they'll draw out more ego in others. And that light may draw out ego anyway. It often does. But that's not for you to worry about. Because whatever that light was, the other person who might be reacting to it, they helped co-create that situation where they showed up at just the right time to get that blast of light that showed them some chunk of their ego or trauma. And they might react and, be angry at you for blasting them with light. But They co-created the situation so they could receive that. It's up to them to use it or not, to dissolve whatever's really distorted that's reacting to the light, right? It's not for you to worry about. You don't need to worry about other people's consciousness right now. You got to worry about yours. That's the only way we're going to make it through the slow free fall of these systems that are crumbling. So we're in this really interesting time trying to navigate all of this, really finding our way. And I'm just constantly being aware of myself and those quadrants, my mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual progress. It is a lifestyle, right? We might call it a mystical lifestyle or a spiritual path or a journey. And not everyone wants to take it to its full end. You know, not everybody on the call today wants enlightenment or unbounded awareness or to be one with source. Some people would be quite pleased with just inner peace. And by golly, that is worth it. Inner peace. Why not? You don't have to take it to its end. If you can just at least love yourself and feel peaceful, that's really good enough. We can do that. We can do that by being part of nature again, by trusting it again, by finding ways to connect to it, small little ways. One of the smallest creatures on this planet, without him, we'd never survive. I'm talking about ants. Ants are so important. Here in Ecuador, there's like there's more types of ants here than I've ever seen in my life. And some of the tiniest I've ever seen. They're so tiny you can barely see them. You have to get up really close to them. And I'm always amazed because they're always so diligent about cleaning up the crumbs of life, even the little bitty ones, carrying off these little tiny pieces of food that got dropped or whatever, on up to these big, huge ants with these heads that look like they're too big for their bodies. You know, big, huge carpenter ants that run super fast and are looking for other bugs to munch on or whatever. Without these tiny little amazing creatures, none of us would live, yet we don't think about being grateful for ants every day, do we? That's the kind of wild mindset change we're doing, where we're going to be like, I love the trees, I love the ants, I love all these things. I exist here because of how Gaia works. I exist here because of ants. How amazing is that? That's what I'm talking about, like being able to feel the connection to everything that's nourishing you and full of light. Ants have no ego. They're just full of light. They're precious light. Birds don't have any ego. They're just light. They're pure light. When they sing, there's just light pouring out of them. It's so cool. And for those of you who crave being able to see this stuff, it's coming. Don't resist that, right? So let me give you some tips, okay, on the third eye, because I can sense that it can be frustrating not to see the cool stuff. Some of the things I see are really, really physical. And I'm always surprised when I'm like, can you see that? And other people are like, no, I can't see that. And I'm like, wow, you know, it's the third eye and the 3D eyes really work together. And some of the things that you're going to be able to see more and more of are very, very physical. So, I want to help you with that third eye piece. A lot of people get shut down through cultural conditioning. They get their third eye shut down. And so they'll be afraid of something scary they saw a lot of times when they're a kid. That's a big reason why people shut their third eye down. Or usually both, later on they'll be old enough and then somebody will say, they might create something and they'll say, well, that's just your imagination. It's just your imagination. It's not real. You're just making it up. That statement is madness. It's madness. I remember as a kid, someone saying that to me and I started laughing. And I looked at them and I'm like, I didn't say this to the person. I think it was a teacher. I thought in my mind, you have no idea what you're talking about. I am not capable of making this stuff up. I am not that smart. And it wasn't that I was beating myself up. It was that I knew that what I was perceiving was real. And that was so amazing and so immense and required so much more knowledge about the world to make something like that up. That's when I was like, nah, they're wrong. They're wrong. And I couldn't shut my third eye anyway, so it didn't matter. But the fact is, and here's the clue, you can't make anything up. It already got made up. Source made it up. You can't imagine anything new. All you can do is access what's already there. So don't let your ego take responsibility for what's available in perception. You didn't make it up. You didn't dream you into existence. Source did. Source already imagined everything in every moment, including this conversation, into existence. I'm the part of Source who's playing it out. That's all. I'm living in that movie. The truth is more the movie screen. And Source developed every single movie ever in consciousness, any life, any consciousness at all, is simply the movies played on the screen. So you can't make anything up. You can only tap into what's available. So take a deep breath. What you see is available. What you step into with your imagination is available. Imagination is the doorway that you use your third eye to imagine something, and then you step into it, and then it unfolds. Imagination is that step through the doorway of the multidimensional experience we have. When I was a kid, my dad said to me, and this is so important, my dad said to me, he studied, I would call him a war history expert. Now, he didn't get any degree on it. He's just read every single book about every battle that's ever existed, practically, because he loves that stuff. He's been a soldier many, many lifetimes, and at least this one, because he doesn't believe in other lives. But for this one, he's an incredible soldier, an officer, and so he really loves war history. He relates to that history. And he was teaching me about war, right, for many years, especially as a kid when growing up in Germany during the Cold War. But as I was in my teen years, he allowed me to see some of the more violent, wretched parts of war. And he took me, I remember when the movie D-Day came out, and he took me, and before we walked into the movie, which is extremely violent and very realistic and gut-wrenching, before he took me in, he said, Elizabeth, I want you to know that I've prepared for what you're going to watch. This is what I built my life around. I prepared myself and all my work and all my effort that I ever took to perhaps fight a battle like this that would change the world. I dedicated my life to that, right? We go in, we watch this horrifying movie. I'm slightly traumatized. We come out. He hugs me. He says he's sorry. He knows my heart is hurting, and his is too. And he's like, I'm not going to hide this from you. This is real. This is what happened. This is as realistic and up close to what has occurred as you can get. And he says to me, Elizabeth, things like these do happen. These sorts of battles and fights, they happen. Torture happens. These, false imprisonment happens. And he said, these things could happen to us. And if they do, keep something in mind. He said, your mind is a paradise. They might hurt your body. They might try to hurt you in every which way they can, they being an enemy of sorts who wants to have power over you. And he said, but they can't take away your mind. Your mind is a paradise. And he's right. But he's more right than he ever knew. Your mind is the seat of your third eye. Your third eye is the gateway to help you to create that inner paradise and that inner journey that goes home towards source. So here's a fun third eye game of sorts. And it's a game that I used to do as a kid. And I'm really glad my dad had told me about that, because then I didn't feel guilty about having done this game as a child to help myself through hard times of deep trauma. But it's time for us to create our own inner paradise. And the fourth dimension is the place you make it. So when you step into your imagination and you say, I want to make a beautiful place, what's a place that I would like to be at? Do a little research. Maybe you're not really sure. Maybe you need to think about, where you would want a vacation if you could have a long vacation, or where would a refuge or safe place be and what would it look like? Will it even be on this planet? It can be anything. For me, as a little girl, it was a Victorian rose garden that was a secret garden, right? So nobody could get in. It was safe. There's a big wall around it, just like The Secret Garden, which I loved that movie. Just like The Secret Garden, the door to get to my place was hidden and with ivy and stuff, right? And then you get into the garden and there's all this beautiful rose garden. It was all cultivated with every color rose you could think of. And I imagined having a table, a cast iron garden table and chairs with tea party set up. And I imagined a fountain in the middle and pathways throughout this massive garden, and just beautiful spots with little fountains and vignettes and new friends that I could be with in my garden. And this is a place I would go to when I was feeling stressed out. So when my dad said, your mind is a paradise, well, I knew exactly what he meant. Because I had this place that nourished me. Why? What was nourishing about it? It was beautiful. It felt really good to imagine laying in that grass and smelling all the roses, having a tea party as a kid, right? It's made of light. That's why it nourishes you. It's made of light. And of course, here's the funny part. I didn't make it up at all. Source did. I just ended up tapping into it. I love that. I love that that's how this universe works. I love that we can tap into these things freely, that we can go in and be able to take part in what Source has given us at no cost. At no cost. So as you create your own place, your own special mind vacation, your own special refuge, it develops your third eye, it strengthens your third eye, and it nourishes you. But keep in mind that you're not making it up. You're accessing it because it was already there in consciousness. It feels like you're making it because you're a creator being, but you're being created simultaneously. And that creator who creates you already created the whole life trajectory. Now the individuation of Source, that is you, gets to walk through it and experience it through linear time. From the Source level of existence, there is no linear time. It's all one thing. Time is the whole universe. It's an ocean. It's not a line. But we get to experience it through linear time. That's why linear time is a very cool gift. I don't beat up on linear time. I just love linear time. It's so much fun. You never know exactly what's going to happen. Who would want to? It would be boring. So this is really cool. It's fun that we get to do this inner work together, that we get to access what's available in consciousness together and talk about these things. And I'm so glad. I wish my chat was working. For those of you who are here, I don't know if the chat's working on my channel or not. I think something happened with how my YouTube and my Zoom connected. So next time I'm probably just going to try to go direct through YouTube. My apologies. But if you have any questions or comments, email me right now because I'm on my email on my cell phone here. And my email is elizabeth@seer-and-scientist. Okay, so I have a few things that came through. Thank you all for being patient. So, okay, so Nicolette says, could you shed some awareness on how to embrace pathogens? I'd love to. I'm sorry, I'm not going to use the V word, but we can use that word, okay? So I actually taught a class. It was like 4 hours long. It's still available. It's called Quantum Healing for Infectious Disease. And in the first part of it, I described to you the truth of pathogens. And I describe how all of these are actually deeply intelligent beings. Recently, you can go look this up. Recently, they just found, I believe it finally went up to about 140,000 brand new viruses in the human gut. This is in science articles at the moment. I mean, that's a lot. And who knows how many guts they were looking at? Probably not a lot. They didn't need to. But we're talking about a kingdom that is conscious, right? And then there's bacteria. We're discovering new bacteria all the time. Somebody took a tablespoon of dirt out of their garden and then tested it and found brand new antibiotics and brand new bacteria. So, I mean, that's a tablespoon of dirt out of somebody's garden. We've only scratched the surface on the kingdoms of pathogens that are actually living in symbiotic relationship with us. Your body cannot exist without bacteria and viruses, folks. Your body's mostly made of them. If you freeze dried somebody suddenly and you sifted through what was left, most of the DNA that you'd be looking at wouldn't be human at all. It would be virus and bacteria. Well, let me give you an example of how we can shift our relationship with this stuff. First thing we need to do is acknowledge that it's intelligent. Second thing is that when things are intelligent, that means some level of communication can occur. It doesn't matter if they're microscopic size or not, because you're not giant or as giant as you think you are. Try to compare yourself to a planet. It'll make you feel real microscopic really quick. So there's all these levels of consciousness going from the quantum, the microscopic, all up to, of course, the universal and galactic. The cool part is that these human bodies can perceive all those layers of reality. We're aware of them. We study them, we navigate them, we're interested in them, right? That's what makes humans pretty neat, in my opinion. So let me give you an example of how this works, okay? Last like July, August, I got shingles. And I'm like, wow, this sucks. I can't even believe I have shingles. This is so horrible. The context was really, I was really digging deep into a lot of my worthlessness stuff and I was having a hard time with it. It was really difficult. I had been chipping away at my arrogance for years, but I needed to dig deep into my worthlessness stuff. And that was a challenge. It still is. I'm still doing it. It takes a long time to get through those layers. But if we're diligent about it, it doesn't have to take years. So anyway, I get shingles and I'm like, what the heck? And so I'm super sick. It's extremely painful. I can barely move. I can't even wear clothing on my body. It hurt too much. It was horrible. And I'm like, what is this? Like, I know that this is a virus and it's intelligent. So I need to figure out more about this. I was so tired and sick. So it took me a while to figure all this out. It was like 2 weeks that I was really sick. And like, while I was awake for very little time, I would go digging to try to find out what is going on here. I was feeling really separate from these shingles because they were hurting me. And so I went and I looked it up and I'm like, well, it turns out shingles is the chickenpox virus. And then it made it make way more sense. I was being shown something and I had missed the point. So I dug in and I said, all right, what happened when I had chickenpox? Well, I was about 5 or 6 and I wanted to be a ballerina more than anything. And I'd been taking ballet classes and we were building up to a really special recital. And the ballet class, of course, was my dream come true. I was just so thrilled that we were going to do this and I got to be on the stage for the first time and everything. But then I got the chickenpox, a really bad case of it. Everybody felt really bad for me. So they brought me a videotape of the recital that they did without me. And I was suffering. And so I was on the ground, laying down on the living room floor, watching the recital that I had missed over and over and over again. And meanwhile, the chickenpox covered my face in scars. I still have a lot of scars from it. And I was mourning. I knew that my face was not going to ever be the same. And I was mourning being beautiful. And I felt so ugly as I'm watching all my friends from ballet over and over and over again do the thing that I had been working really hard to do that I didn't get to do. And I suddenly understood why shingles had come to help me. The shingles had come to remind me of the very first time that I had created deep worthlessness, because I hadn't figured out when that began until that moment. And I relived this moment of my 5-year-old self learning how to hate herself, looking at the mirror and saying, I'm so ugly now, I'll never be a pretty ballerina. And this was what the shingles wanted to help me heal. And when I went in and I really felt that worthlessness and I welcomed it, and I held my little 5-year-old self and I showed her the truth. Get this, within a single day, the shingles was completely healed. So I don't see pathogens as pathogens. I see them as co-creators who are here to help us understand what needs to be understood deep within us. Yes, it can be very painful to have this relationship with these things, but they already live in you. They're already having a symbiotic relationship with you. When they show up big time in a painful way, it's because you're missing something. It's because you're missing an emotional and mental process that's really important for you to look at, even if it's simply the fear of death. And we were talking about that at the beginning. The fear of death is highly distorting to reality. So I say, as you may want to also communicate to the animal kingdom, include the bacteria and the virus kingdoms. They are intelligent. Talk to them. See what they have to say through your heart. They're not separate from you, and they bring a lot of light. I am utterly grateful to all of those beings that have helped me, whether it was through infection of some kind or an illness, but they did every single time they helped me. Even when I first got the chicken pox. In the long run, it also kept me from being too arrogant, having scars on my face, because I built up a level of arrogance that's kind of ridiculous, mainly through academia, but it kept me from being too arrogant. And that was a gift. It's all perfect. I have zero issues with how my life has unfolded or the illnesses that I've had. So it's time for us to have an open communication with this kingdom. Just because you can't see them, just like the ants most of the time, doesn't mean that you don't need them. We wouldn't be here without them. And so I want us to include them in our love, because that's what's going to heal humanity. And it's so hard because we think, this thing is destroying And I don't see it that way. I see them as showing us. They show us more things than we've ever imagined. So we're not separate from them. In fact, your whole body's made of this stuff. And when infection occurs, it's because now there's something that has made room that needs to be examined, right? There's something in you that needs to be seen. I'm like touching my body, but there needs to be something seen. That's why there might be an infection. A lot of times there's an emotional, spiritual piece that finally it's come up that the bacteria or virus on whatever part of your body is showing you something somewhere that you're holding, right? This powerlessness. The shingles were right underneath my solar plexus, all across my whole abdomen. And that was also where I would look down every day and see all my chickenpox scars get worse and worse on my abdomen. So it's the exact right place. It had to do with power and feeling a lack of love for myself, cutting myself off from my lower half of my body and all my power. So thank you for that. I appreciate that question. It's a challenging answer. All right, so Sylvia is asking, I feel like even though it will take a while, as you said, perhaps generations, for the systems to change, I feel I'll be experiencing freedom from the fear of death, not just in my lifetime, but soon. And that all it takes is a shift or micro shifts of perspectives. What do you think? I think you're right on, Sylvia. It's exactly true. Yeah, micro shifts, a little every day, right? A little every day. Micro shifts, I like that. So a micro shift in consciousness around the fear of death. Well, first you need to know, of course, what's actually true. If we're being taught and programmed to be afraid of death, right? Then what's really true? Well, first off, there is no death. There's nothing to be afraid of at all. There's transformation, there's change. There isn't really any death. Death assumes non-existence. That doesn't happen in the universe. Non-existence is the void. There is no void inside the universal mind containing all things. That's outside the universe. That's the space between universes is the void. That's not where we're functioning from. So instead, a big mindset change would be, I actually am going to celebrate this amazing law of transformation. It's a law of destruction which transforms. So we could celebrate it and say, Grandma is changing. Our super old dog is changing. That's why we use the term transitioning. That's more true. So things are changing. Does it make grief easier? No. I always point, I was watching a superhero show. I like superhero shows. And one of the superheroes said, I suppose grief is really just enduring love. And I agree with that. I thought that's really smart. I was thinking about that this morning. Grief is just enduring love. It's love that endures. It's painful because the love seems like it's not reaching the being that you're grieving about. But that's also not true. As your psychic abilities get more and more strong and more utilized and more open with the formlessness that's happening, it's going to naturally happen to most of us. And you can speed the process up by trying to use your third eye externally as often as possible. And the way you do that simply is to ask, is there anything that can be seen about this? Is there anything, source, show me what there is to be seen right now. Remember, it's access, not so much making anything up. So as the third eye opens, you'll see the truth that grandma never left, that our animals and pets, they never left. They changed. And your love still reaches them. And in fact, they are loving you back, often in more perfect ways, without ego, without trauma. And then you're not separate from your loved ones anymore. Those are micro steps to a big shift in consciousness around death. And so, yeah, we can dissolve this program in ourselves way faster than say society might. But the more of us that dedicate ourselves to dissolving these programs, and there's a universal set of them, that's a big one, but that's not the only one. There's 5. I call them the 5 fields of limitation. And as we work through the dissolving of them, the world changes, and it can change faster than we think. I think the 100% complete and total change will take a long time, but the inner changes can be deeply profound and important and set up the foundation for the big changes that we would see as a global scale setup of change. Micro steps, baby steps, micro shifts. Minute by minute, remain present. Just keep noticing what it is that you're being asked to do each moment. You don't need to work in the future. You can't. And you can't work in the past. You can only work in the moment and the now. So I think that's a wonderful comment. I love that. Okay, so Kyle's asking a little bit about the quadrants, and so I did mention them, but it got a little confused in the discussion I was having. So the personal quadrants, just to reiterate, are, of course, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Cultural quadrants are beliefs, language, and ideas, social structure and relationships, the political economy, which is how people meet their needs, and the infrastructure, the physical reality of culture. Those are the cultural quadrants. And so that's something that you can use, these 2 sets of quadrants for yourself to consistently make assessments about your evolution and about the changes around you. And the secret to culture change is that if you change the material and the mental and belief systems that are often fed by political economy and social structure, right? But if you change the physical world and the mental world at the same time, then change can happen faster through the 4 quadrants than if you only tweaked something in one spot. But if you do it both from your beliefs, mental and emotional changes there, and then make changes in the physical simultaneously, you'll see bigger, faster changes occur. So perhaps using new language around death or pathogens, right? New beliefs, and then physically bringing in more bacteria into your life, more yogurts, more fermented foods, physically nourishing the kingdom of bacterium that love you so much. It's going to help you to then shift faster in all quadrants. Just keep that in mind. Always ask yourself, what's a mental change I can make, and what's a physical change that I can make that relates to it? And then you're going to be set up correctly for good quality change to occur in your life. Good stuff. Good clarifying question, glad. All right, so Sherry's asking about programmed unconscious trauma, right? Do you need to remember your trauma to heal it? And so she's noticing that when she fell into the question, she felt that no, she didn't have to relive it to heal it, that the cells in the DNA, they feel it even without words or actually seeing or remembering it, right? And so to an extent, I don't think that we can remember things very well with our brains. The brain mind isn't the seat of memory, it's your heart, right? And so we don't need to depend on our brain to help remember trauma. That's not what's most important. It's the feeling that's important. You do have to go into the feeling, the emotional frequency of trauma in order to heal it. You might not have to mentally remember it. A lot of people can't. I certainly have memories that are blocked out that way later I remembered and I'm like, what the heck? Blocked memories showing up is always very weird. Memories that were not mine, but maybe when I was a kid, I heard a story and then I imagined what the person was saying, or I could psychically see it. And then later I'm like, well, I thought that happened to me. No, actually it happened to your dad. And he was telling my mom about it and I heard it and took it on as a memory. Oh, okay. But the feeling was still there. So we can't really depend on mental memory to help us heal trauma. It's never gonna be exact, but we can depend on the feeling and on the heart. The heart remembers everything because the heart doesn't regenerate, right? So for folks who have been through major brainwashing or programming, a lot of people been through a lot of SRA stuff. They've been through shattering of their mind. And I work with people like that. But listen, the shattering of a mind, that means the shattering of identity. They don't know who they are, especially if it's shattered during a situation like a cult situation where they were given an identity. Now they have a new name, or now they have a new belief system, or they replaced the shattered mind with something else. So now they don't even know who they are. You know, they do this systematically in the military. They literally say, we're going to break you down and then we're going to build you back up in the image we want. They tell you that. That's a shattering of a mind. And the shattering of a mind can be done in many, many different ways. Some of it's very subtle and might not even seem like trauma. So the shattered mind is something we're going to have to look at as a species, because we have so many people who have gone through that shattering. It's highly systematic. I would argue that a lot of the education systems in the world are based around that same militaristic idea that we're going to break you down and then we're going to tell you that your imagination isn't real. We're going to break you down and then we're going to build you in the image we want, the perfect little worker for our matrix. So I say you may not be able to relive memories mentally, but you must walk through the trauma of the emotion in order to understand it. And what you will learn is that it is a frequency, that it cannot hurt you, And that if you're willing to fully feel it, it won't have power over you anymore. So what has power over you right now? Are you depressed? Are you sad? Are you isolated? Are you angry? Are you in grief? What frequency seems to have power over you that you're wanting to avoid? For me, it was worthlessness. For so long, I'd avoid it. Now I'm digging through it. I've been trudging through this worthlessness stuff for a couple years now. And I've got 38 years of working on building it up. So you can't expect this stuff to disappear overnight. You got to be willing to go through it. You got to recapitulate what's available. None of this stuff is going to hurt you. All it is frequency, but it's built up in your body because you've separated yourself from it. You've avoided it, so it got shoved down in your body, got shoved down and away from your mind and deep down into your heart, deep down into your body and your cells and your emotional body. No wonder all the men tend to wear armor and all the women are wearing energy around their root, right? A lot of women will have trouble losing weight in their belly. I'm one of them. And it's because there's this deep energy that I've let settle down in my root, and my body's trying to protect me. I'm wearing armor around my root. I'd hate to call it like a chastity belt, but energetically, that's kind of what it looks like. It's like a metallic, heavy, deep lead energy that's blocking my whole power center off to try to keep me safe, because my body didn't know what to do with all those emotions. I wasn't willing to actually go deal with them. So I shoved it down and it ended up in my power center, in my root, right? And for the masculine, the power center is the heart. And so a lot of men will wear armor and then they are cut off. If you ask them how they feel in their body, they can't feel their body. They can't feel their heart. A lot of women and men just feel like a floating brain because they're so traumatized, they can't even feel their body. They can't feel their emotions. So to go in and systematically try to feel them a little bit at a time. Be willing to get triggered and notice where the trigger is in the body. You'll begin to feel it more and more. Your throat will tighten up, your gut will cinch up, your solar plexus feels heavy, and you get better and better at using your whole body to navigate trauma. But the only way you're going to be able to really navigate through it all the way, my friends, is self-care. We can't fully heal if we are living in an abusive situation. If we're living in an environment that is causing more trauma, you're not going to heal. If you're surrounded in people who are abusing you, you're not going to be able to heal. This is called self-care. If you want to survive, if you want to heal, be willing to walk away if you have to be in an environment where it is conducive to your healing. So the environment's going to affect how quickly you're able to heal. This is why a lot of people, they end up stopping there. They're not able to finalize their deepest healing because they feel so dependent on the situation that they're in, even though it's abusing them. So then they can't heal. It's a terrible conundrum. And so many people go through it, including me, by the way. I stayed for many, many years in abusive relationships because I thought that I could navigate my own healing nonetheless. I know it was not true. I had to be completely out of those situations in order to truly heal. To truly heighten my consciousness, you can't be under piles of massive abuse to heighten consciousness. It won't work. You'll always feel like you're taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Self-care. You need to take care of you. You're important. Do you realize how important you are to consciousness? Do you realize that you picked this time on earth on purpose and this life? Do you realize that you're strong enough to move from a not healing situation to a healing one? That this is the challenge that you set up for yourself because you're so strong. You're so strong that you can prove to consciousness and your own soul that you can heal and that you can be in a nurturing, healing situation. So I want to encourage that self-care. Create a space for yourself. Carve out your place. Make it yours. Keep telling yourself, even though your ego might fight with you about it, I am part of this consciousness shift for the whole globe. I'm not separate from it. I'm here to take my part and run it all the way through. I'm here to fulfill the role of being Elizabeth or whomever you might be. And to strengthen my soul and to discover more love, including love for myself. And that can be really hard because we are taught in our systematic programming not to love ourselves. That, well, if you're in that situation, you made the bed, now you have to sleep in it. It's not true. It's not true. Put the intention out there. Source, I don't know exactly how I'm going to do this. It's not up to me. I don't have a big enough imagination to imagine this, but I put it out to you, Source. I want to be in a nurturing, healing environment where I can truly heal myself. Help me. Help me to do that. Imagine that it's possible. Feel how that feels to be in a healing environment, to be healed in a healing environment, right? And then let it go. Give it to Source. Ask Source to help you create that. You're not alone. This is how abundance works. This is how manifesting works. You can't hang on to it. You have to let it go and let Source imagine up the most wonderful scenarios for you because it's available. What you can imagine is a teeny little portion of what's possible. So that's why we don't necessarily mentally have to remember trauma, but we do have to feel it. We have to feel the frequencies fully so that and understand them so they don't have power over us. Same with our circumstance. If there's abusive power over you, you're going to be building up more trash bags than you're getting rid of. So you'll never feel finished with your trauma. Good. Okay. So Kathleen was just wanting to say that she had like major ulcers and MALT lymphoma because of H. pylori, and that the bacteria H. pylori taught her so much about herself. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Kathleen, for sharing that. So I'm looking at Jesse. So Jesse says, could you share some insights from the past full moon's energy and how that supports our frequency and power to shift bottom up, inner and outer? And I love that, Jesse. Well, it's hard for me to say exactly because everybody's a little different, Jesse. Like for me, so I'm just going to speak from my perspective. I do know that other people like really have love-hate relationships with the moon. And let's start first to say that I believe the moon has been an integral part of human consciousness and planetary evolution, that it's not fake, and that the moon is a very important part of the long trajectory of Gaia's evolution. And so for me, the full moons are always like these big gateways where the veils are super thin between dimensions and between the past, the present, and the future. So for example, the past 2 nights, I keep noticing that the different beings from the past, because those are big imprints on the quantum field, that they're accessible. So I'll be laying in bed and I can perceive someone walking into my room or walking through the house or around the house. And it's not a ghost, and it's not interacting with me or anything. It's just leftover energy from time. So like one time, especially on the full moons in an apartment I was living in, at 4 a.m. every morning, a Native American family would walk through the bottom floor of my apartment building on their way from whatever travel they were doing. And some of my friends and I would stay up really, really late just to perceive this because it was there. And I'm like, all right, it's almost 4 and we're going to see this family walk through, you know, and some people would be able to see it quite well, or at least feel it. But what was that? It wasn't a ghost, it was an imprint in time. And so, especially around the full moon, those imprints are just very active, right? The other thing is that full moon is reflecting sunlight at you, right? So it's not a hot sunlight, it's a cool sunlight. And it's a reflection. And so that light is actually really nourishing for your body. That's why people would stay up during full moons. Many, many cultures really utilize the full moons in many ways. So although I don't know all of exactly how different cultures did that, it might be really fun for you to look up the power of the full moon and how it's defined certain cultural events and celebrations, right? The other thing I notice around full moons is the thinning of the veil, yes, but also that it'll often denote a big wave of consciousness. So over the past week, as this has been building up, this big tsunami of consciousness trying to draw out that fear of death energy, and each wave of consciousness will do something different. But these big tsunami waves, you know, they'll come in and they'll start, they're really chunky, you know, they're just picking up every structure, and you can either feel crushed by it or you can surf it, right? And so the power of the full moon is, as it builds up to that, you can choose to surf that energy and just notice it. You'll often see a lot of strange coincidental events and serendipitous events during full moon times. Most nurses and doctors will often say that their ERs are full and more babies come and more people get into accidents on full moons than any other time. That's because it's often magnifying energy. So you can use that You could say, I ask for this time, right? We put an intent out in the field. I ask for this time now to help me to reveal further ego and structure and trauma that needs to be shifted. And so we can ask for that, right? So I would say, put that intent out there. That's how you can use the full moon, is say, I intend for this to reveal, to illuminate in me what that tsunami is, what that tsunami is coming for in me. And we can just reveal it for ourselves and just to be open to that, right? And a lot of times there'll be things around you that will reveal this stuff, like, oh, this particular event has happened to a bunch of people all at once. That's something is going to get drawn out of you or triggered for you to look at. That's going to be related to that somehow. So I actually use full moon times to help me process stuff. And some people use it to re-energize themselves, to help themselves heal. It's definitely always a time that you can feel the moon pulling on the water in your body. People will feel like they are being pulled and they can resist it. And if you resist it, you'll be very uncomfortable. You won't sleep well, all those things. If you don't resist it, you'll have fabulous, interesting dreams. You'll have good processes and use it for healing, nourishing your light inside of you. So very cool questions today. Thank you for using my email. I do appreciate it. I'm sorry about the chat problem. I'm going to work it out next time. Let's build a pillar of light. Before we do that, I want to invite you to do something with me. I've been talking about nourishing a little bit today. My friend Adria and I were looking at this and realized that people really need to be nourished. And Adria and I are really good at helping people feel nourished. So we want to help you. We want to give you some clarity about those 5 programs. One of them is the fear of death, how to dissolve those programs, right? And then to connect you to the most nourishing light, the opposite of those programs. And then Adria works with the angels, and she's extremely good at talking with them. Like she makes it seem so normal and natural. And I love it because she's normalizing something that we're all capable of doing. She's extremely talented. And Adria Estrabo. And so this coming weekend, actually, on the 6th and 7th, we're doing 2 3-hour sessions on Saturday and Sunday this next week. So a little less than a week from now. On Saturday and Sunday, we're doing 2 3-hour sessions. It's going to start on Saturday and Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern time. And they may go longer than 3 hours. But we're going to help you shift out of those programs and be nourished by that light. And we're going to work with the angels to do it. And the angels always give such great insight into empowerment and sovereignty, because that's what they're here to help us do, so they can go home. They want to go home, but they got to finish their job. Their job is to get all of their demonic brethren off the planet and to support the sovereignty of humans. And so they're going to come and chat with us through Adria's ability to communicate with them. That is so natural. But here's the deal. This isn't a working retreat. It's not a retreat like I normally do, where we're doing a whole bunch of work at all. It's the other way around. I want you to show up in your jammies with a cup of tea and put your feet up and let us help you by letting us nurture you, letting us feed you this light. It's not meant to be mental. It's a receiving, nourishing retreat. And then you'll have those replays forever. that you can go back to over and over again to nourish you, to support you. Let's say you're in an environment right now where you're not feeling nourished, where you're really conscious of these systems that are built literally not to nourish you, but to nourish the top, right? Well, this would be something that you might be able to do for yourself to help keep you in a stable, nourishing trajectory. I would call it self-care. So normally, although I do working retreats, this is not that. It's the opposite. It's a guided retreat of nourishing light. If you'd like to know more about it, go to my website. It's under offerings. It says, I am of the divine. By the end of it, we're going to be speaking to your soul the whole time. By the end of it, we're hoping to have set you up with a foundation in your subconscious, in your DNA, in your heart, that you are of the divine, you're not separate from it, and that you deserve to be nourished, and that you deserve to be free, to set you up with more sovereignty, but in a natural way, in a receiving way. And if you need some help around payments or whatever, just email me. I want to help you. We'll work it out. So we never want to turn anyone away, right? So there's ways for us to work together, lots of ways. If this feels like it's just right on time, that you need this nourishing weekend, if you've got any questions, email me. Check out what we wrote, the copy that we wrote about what this whole thing is about and what we're intending to do. See if it resonates with you, and come and join us next Saturday and Sunday, 3 p.m. for at least 3 hours. And just be in receiving. You deserve it. It's self-care. And we'll be doing more things like this. And if you can't come live, we'll be selling the replays separately after it's done at a different price point. So don't worry about that. And we're going to have transcripts, by the way, because I think transcripts are important. And so let's keep working together. The other thing that's coming up is on the 20th. Wait, let me back up. I just taught a class yesterday on dissolving cultural programming, cultural conditioning. It went about 3.5 hours long. It was very, very rich. And the next class, the second class, is going to be on the 13th. So that's going to be a couple of Saturdays away. And that's the second part to that series, because that's a huge topic, dissolving cultural programming and conditioning. So the first class was really rich. We just did it yesterday. It was amazing. And that will be available as instant access within the next day or so. But the second class is on the 13th. So if you want to come to that too, or just wait till later and get the replays or whatever, that's happening. And then the last thing I wanted to tell you about before we build our pillar of light is that I'm going to do my first quarterly update. This year I'm doing quarterly updates where I'm going to give you a readout of what's just happened in the past quarter, and like a big broad overview, way more deeply than I do on our monthly calls. But I'm also going to give you some clarity about what's happening with the next quarter, which I don't normally do. So it's going to be something a little different. And then our March community call will be on the 28th of March on Sunday. So I'll see you then live here on the YouTube channel again, and preferably with a functioning chat. My apologies. So, okay, good. Let's do a pillar of light. And so I'm going to sit really quick. Just take a deep breath with me. It'll take us about 10 minutes at the most. And I'm asking Source, where does this pillar of light need to be built right now? Oh yes, we're going right over to the Middle East. Oh, my heart. My upper heart is just feeling a lot of pain around the Middle East right now because not everybody's getting along very well at the moment. But I'm looking at Saudi Arabia, but also Iran. And I'm wondering if Iran borders Saudi Arabia. So sorry, I'm doing a quick Google because I want to do it on the border. No, it doesn't. Ooh, but there's water. Okay. When we build pillars of light, I have found that when we use ice or water as our foundation, that it magnifies whatever we do, which makes sense. Water magnifies everything. All right, so let's actually do this right up. What Iran and Saudi Arabia have in common is the Persian Gulf. Let's do it right smack in the top, the middle of the very tippy top of the Persian Gulf, which is surrounded by Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and Iran. Okay, that's where we're going to do it. Whew, it's feeling powerful already. All right, so I want you to just imagine the Persian Gulf with me, right? And just go right up to the top of it. We're staying right in the middle of the water, but we're surrounded in land in front of us. And on our right is Iran, top left is Kuwait, and on our left is Saudi Arabia. Good. All right, so we got to build our foundation first. So let's get it together in a big circle. So I want us to imagine we're all in a big circle. We have over 80 people together live right now. Oh, good. Awesome. All right. So now we're going to actually project energy from our gut mind. Our bacteria virus world lives there. So let's ask them, what do you want, bacteria and virus in my body? What do you want us to do? What quality of light do you want? Ah, yes. And they say immediately in my mind, trust in nature, trust in nature. That's what they say. Okay, good. So I want you to pull up that energy in your gut. There's a part of you that trusts nature. There might be some parts that doesn't. Don't worry about those parts. Just pull up the feeling of, I trust in nature. Let it move into your gut. That trust might be coming from somewhere else in your body, but let that light be in your gut. Let it get really big, like a big ball of light. It looks like gold light to me. And now with a deep breath, I'd like you to project the energy of trust in nature out to the foundation of our pillar here in the Persian Gulf with a deep breath. Oh, wow, this one's fascinating. All right, every pillar is different. Wow. That's beautiful. What happened was everybody projected that light and immediately it all came together and this beautiful garden burst forth with every flower and plant you could think of. And now the whole top of the Persian Gulf, it just spread. It kept spreading. It's all one big garden. It's huge. It's a giant, giant garden. Many, many, many miles across, filling the whole top of the Persian Gulf. It looks like Eden. It looks like the Garden of Eden. That's what trust in nature is. Eden. Amazing. All right. Oh, it feels so nourishing and beautiful. All right, let's come up into the heart and we're going to ask our heart and source, what is it? What's the next piece? Good. So I hear the phrase, love which nurtures peace. So it's not just any type of love, but the kind of love that nurtures peace. So a peaceful love, a love that helps all to be peaceful. It might be called the peacekeeper's love, the peacekeeper's love, right? And so what does that feel like? Well, if you've ever been the one who was the peacekeeper in your family, right? Or you ever were a peacekeeper between a tyrant and a victim, or maybe you were often peacekeeping on your own behalf, right? That's the kind of energy it is. It's the peacekeeper's love. So we got to pull the frequency of that up. I just want you to envision what that might be for you. How does this peacekeeping love feel for you? If you don't have any experience with it, just ask your soul. Your soul's probably had experience with it or seen it. So let it just come up on its own, right? It's very soft. It's soft. It's soft white light, like a soft little dove, right? So cool. Oh, good. Okay. So pull that soft white light or the peacekeeping love, however you might see it. I'm just describing what I see. Let it fill your heart. And now with a deep breath, let it become the centerpiece of our pillar of light in the Persian Gulf now with a deep breath. Wow, I got full body crazy tingles, guys. It's getting better and better, these pillars of light, I have to say. Ever since the solstice, this one and the one in January, I'm getting like full body reactions to this stuff, which is not normal for me. I just am speechless. It's the most beautiful field of love. It's so sweet. It's so gentle. It's heartbreakingly gentle. You know why it's heartbreakingly gentle is because there's parts of me who want to feel this all the time. I want to feel like somebody or source, or that there's some consciousness out there that wants this for me, and I do. I can sense it. But there's that hurt part in my heart right now. This is good. This is showing me just real time trauma that I have. I've been the peacekeeper. Will someone keep the peace for me? And that's what I feel being pinged right now as I'm seeing this peace, like a beautiful shimmery fog reaching out above the garden, and it's bright, and it just moves out into consciousness, dripping peace on everyone like a mist. And I want it. I want this. I want to be nourished by this. And we all can. This pillar is for all of us. It's not just the Middle East, it's for all of us. It's for us too. Good. Okay, now we come up into the whole upper Dantian, right? The upper Dantian center, and we're going to pull up what is next. Wow, well, that's cool. So this energy that I perceive is what would be called contentment. Can we be content? That one's hard because we are taught, and most cultures are taught, not to be content, right? That's how those big 5 major global programs like the fear of death, cause us never to be content, so that we are never happy with ourselves, right? It actually causes more worthlessness. What would happen if we taught contentment? And I'm not talking about things just being good enough, okay? Talking about true contentment. Contentment is being in the moment. You can't be content when you're worrying about the future all the time. So this is true contentment. It's the contentment of the moment. And again, there might be some difficulty feeling this because we might not all have had very many times where we were actually content. True in the moment contentment, right? So we're just asking our soul, show this to us. And usually contentment shows up for me as a beautiful blue color, like an indigo, bright, soft blue. So I just want you to pull this up, this energy, whether you can really relate to it easily or not. Just pull it up in your brain, pull it up in your head here. And we're going to project it to the top of our pillar of light now with a deep breath. This just turned into like its own world. There's the garden of the trust in nature, the true Eden, which is a mindset. It's not necessarily a place. The whole planet is Eden. It's a mindset. You know, when Adam and Eve were kicked out of Eden, they left the mindset that they could trust in nature and trust God. That's why they got kicked out of Eden, right? It was that they left that mindset. They didn't trust God. They didn't trust Source anymore. They didn't trust nature anymore. But this is the opposite of that. This is the reclaiming of that, which nurtures, of course, the peacekeeper's love, peaceful love, which is like an atmosphere. And then you have the sky, this contentment, this beautiful blue. And it all reaches out way past the Gulf. It goes all the way over the whole planet now, slowly but surely. We've made this available in consciousness, that this combination of energies can nurture us right now. It's what is needed right now. So that's really powerful. And this is yours. You can come back to this and wander this place and hang out there in your imagination, okay? It's free. It's a free playground. I encourage you to do that, to nourish yourself. And this is our special gift. It's for us, but it's a special gift to the Middle East. It's a peacekeeper's gift. It's also a gift to the planet and all of human consciousness. So thank you. Thank you for putting your part in. All right, let's unattach ourselves from it. So we unattach ourselves from this pillar of light. We unattach from our heads, from our hearts, from our guts and our whole body and fields now, so that we can enjoy this as it is. And we just take a deep breath. Spend some time here, nourish yourself here. Be part of this. This is yours. It's for everyone. It's for all the humans and all, of course, our beautiful planet. Thank you for your great questions. Thank you for being here with me today. I hope that you'll come next weekend if you can. Again, reach out to me. Let's work together to nourish you, yeah? And let's keep connecting. We've got a lot of wonderful things going on, especially this month. And there's so much more to come. And so I can't wait to see you again. Next time we'll have a functioning chat. But I love all of you so much. I truly do. I live in love for you. Many people are here for the earth, which is perfect. Many people are here for the animals. My husband and daughter are a good example. I happen to be here for the humans. And I live in that love for you. It's my greatest joy. And I can't wait for us to keep doing these baby steps, these micro shifts, because I do perceive change. Not just from inside myself, but in the whole world. And what you're doing counts. Don't stop. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for being willing to go deep inside. Thank you for nurturing yourself and doing self-care right now. Good. I will see you very soon, my friends. I love you so much. And we'll talk very soon. I'm always available via email too, and I always do try to email as fast as I can. It can be slow sometimes. But feel free to email me, elizabeth@seerandscientist.com, and I can't wait to see you again. Namaste, my friends, and bless you.